We're back with another episode of DreamHack Tonight. I'm one of your hosts, Reinessa, with a topic near and dear to my heart. But we also have the econ professor, the lord of the stats, the wonderful man himself, Nahaz, joining us. Nahaz, how was your Memorial Day?
It was great. It was 50 degrees and rainy, but that was okay because it kept the cicadas at bay. So we actually had a great little cookout. Put a beef tenderloin on the grill, had my in-laws over, and we had a fantastic time. But yeah, we're going to be talking about some cosplay today, which I know everybody should know that you are a huge fan and hugely into it. I'm actually a huge fan as well. I think it's one of the coolest aspects of a lot of these esports events. And I know that DreamHack is going to be doing it a little bit differently this time.
Yeah, so this is what I'm so excited about because I love cosplay. I've been doing a lot with it at DreamHack for a while, and because Beyond is all digital, we kind of have all these new opportunities because we also have 8 days of event time this time instead of just 3. And I finally get to do my dream idea. Which, okay, so we have the normal crafting competition. I don't want to discount that. You guys are wonderful and amazing, and you build those huge builds and everything. But I have always wanted to do a closet cosplay competition where you have to make and do everything in a set amount of time. And so what we're going to do is we're going to, go for the Twitch Rivals style type thing and have a bunch of different cosplayers all streaming. We're going to give them a brief, and then they have 3 hours to transform themselves into something. And so that brief could be MOBA characters, or it could be Shogun animes, or it'll be something kind of loose so that you can identify with a character that you want to. And then the judges are going to be sitting there and hopping around to these different streamers and asking them what they're doing and watching them paint their cardboard and tear through their closets trying to find something. I'm so excited.
So for the record, we have not collabed on this, but I actually have wanted to see something like this for such a long time because very often the cosplay competitions at these bigger events, and ESL's been great about this as well, they end up making their way onto the stream, and they're really impressive. People, have opinions about them, as they do about everything. But I think, just one man's opinion, I think a lot of what is cool about some of the really top cosplays is very, very difficult to see on stream. Like there are people that do, huge 3D printed projects with lighting, and it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. We had Tanakh, I believe, in Dota did a couple of Sven cosplays, which were amazing. There was a Clockwork over in, I think that was the Manila Major that was just out of this world. But and I think Ellie did a Clockwork too that was super cool.
Well, she won. I believe
yeah, she won the TI. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And it's but a lot of the craftsmanship behind these things, and a lot of the way that the outfits move, it doesn't necessarily come across well in a stream environment. And so I think it's cool that some of these other aspects of cosplay competition that don't necessarily always pop or get their due on live stream are going to be showcased in some of these formats.
Yeah, and that's exciting for me, and I think it's going to be fun, and I also think it's going to celebrate the body painters who don't always get acknowledged for being cosplayers. And the other competition I'm so excited about. Now, Haz, are you a fan of Rocket League?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Rocket League to me is like the highest ceiling esport. I've said this for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Well, so one of our other people who's handling who loves Rocket League came to me and said, you know what, I want to do a Rocket League fashion show. And now this idea is still in the works. Don't count this as an official announcement. All of this could go away. This is secret insider look into the mind behind designing things. But what we really, really want to do is we want to pair a Rocket League content creator with a cosplay designer and have the Rocket League content creator pick a car and show off the car and have the cosplayer draw. They don't have to make it. They could if they wanted to. A design, like a fashion wear cosplay inspired by the car kind of combo. And so that way we hit all the elements of cosplaying throughout these 3 competitions, which I'm so excited about.
It's so cool. It's a great concept. It's almost a cosplay meets Project Runway kind of idea, which I think is super cool. Those shows it's a kind of creativity which I absolutely do not possess. So I'm really fascinated by it.
Yet. You know what? We're going to work on you with that. And to do that, we have a guest who I love cosplay, but let me tell you, this woman, Tygarlily, she is an incredible cosplayer, streamer. She's one of our DreamHack streamers, and I'm so excited to introduce her, bring her onto the show, and let her teach Nahaz about everything cosplay.
Oh, hey, my goodness. Hi. Hi, everyone. How are you today?
I feel like we could just do a show with what's in your background. Look at that.
I could explain everything you want because this is.
Yeah.
You know what I want to hear about the Full Metal. Look at that. I mean, the Alphonse helmet is amazing.
Thank you. So this is actually practice. You know, sometimes as an artist, you'll hit like a writer's block, for example. And so sometimes I'll go find a pattern that someone else has put on the internet just to challenge myself and get myself motivated again. And so that's actually what this helmet was for, to help get myself back into gear.
Get out. Don't make me go all Allen Iverson on you here. Practice. I mean, come on. Yeah. That's amazing. So is that 3D printed or is that...
No, I'm a foam worker, so everything I do is foam. I think if I really wanted to push myself to the next level, I should learn 3D programming and printing, but I haven't gotten there yet. So I just do everything out of foam. And the fun thing about cosplay nowadays and the amazing talent out there is everyone will upload a pattern or template once they're done. And so, you know, you'll see it and you'll be like, okay, it's time. I'll download that. I'll just do it. And so it doesn't take too long for us. And then you're going to run into the other cosplayers that make the templates. So they make everything from scratch. And that's actually, I'm working on something like that for Monster Hunter. So you might see that one here off in the corner.
Ooh. Okay, so you said that you work with foam primarily, and something I don't know if people realize, cosplayers do have their specialties, right? So what would you say kind of the different categories of specialty in the cosplay world are?
It's almost like being a gamer or streamer in the industry where you not only are your own production team, your marketing team, you have to do everything, and cosplay goes into that. For example, my specialty is foam work, hands down, but I can't sew to save my life. So I would have to like outsource or ask a cosplay friend to help me sew. So you're gonna run into cosplayers that are really good at one thing, or crafters that are just, you know, leather working, foam working. If you run into someone that's good at all of it, then, you know, that's probably why they became famous in the first place. But, you know, it's a lot of time and dedication and a lot of craftsmanship that goes into making your own builds or props or cosplays.
So as somebody that's just not as familiar with the different categories to begin with, can you roll it back for a second for me and just describe what foam work is? Describe the process of sculpting a piece like that.
So the way I like to say is you start from your 2D design, whatever you just imagined and started from. And then you have to actually go from that to make it 3D. You're like, how do I get to that next step? So you would design something for yourself. And what I usually do is I start with a basis and then I build my design on top of it. So for example, you would just duct tape yourself. Cosplayers call this body forming. I know Reinessa knows a lot about that. But you basically...
That's hilarious.
I need to share duct tape yourself. Yes, please.
No, you don't only duct tape yourself. So this happened my first year of grad school. I need people to know this story. You wrap yourself in saran wrap. That's the first step. You wrap yourself in saran wrap, and then you wrap yourself in pieces of duct tape. If you take the roll and stretch it around you, it gets too tight. So you have to like rip pieces of duct tape off and stick them on you. And then you cut yourself out and like tape it back together and then stuff it full. And then you have like this cheap body form that you've made instead of like ordering a custom mannequin. And my roommate walked in when I was doing it and I was like, no, please don't look at me. Please don't ask me to.
It's very self-conscious. Because you're body forming your body, you know, making your own mannequin based on yourself. And then you can build on top of that. But it's such a weird experience.
I had no idea. That's crazy.
Yeah, so you can either one, use it to build your own mannequin, or two, cut up the duct tape pieces, and then you end up with the little pieces that, you know, you go to the next level and you glue them together like this one. So this is a body form straight off of, you know, that duct taping experience. And then, you know, it doesn't look like much, but it's where we usually start.
And so what she's holding up is all made out of foam.
Yes, this is just all
that's all foam. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. So the foam is less styrofoam and more. Okay, I see.
So,
interesting.
And then you can really see how the pieces are put together. It almost looks like a seamstress putting together a corset, or, you know, a dressmaker. So it kind of derives from pattern making, and then you end up to the next step. And then after that comes the fun. So the artists love this part, is detailing it and making it actually look the way you want it to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is the next step afterwards. Yeah. So this is the fun part. So I don't really like making the body forms, but when it comes to the detailing and, you know, going after your own inspirations, this is based on Gladsky and Jessica Negri's Pokemon armor. So they did a whole bunch of Eevee Evolution Pokemon, and, you know, it's very inspirational and it looked like a lot of fun. So of course I jumped on board.
Oh my gosh. So is that just different pieces of foam that are glued on and then sprayed?
Yeah, so, you know, I start off at the base, and then I continue using form, and I manipulate it with power tools. So for the smaller details, I would just take a Dremel out. The Dremel and the hot glue gun and a heat gun, those are my weapons of choice. Like, if I were to go out into the world, I would want them with me at all times.
Got it. So zombie apocalypse, the cosplayers are equipped with heat guns. That's
honestly,
that's
I feel like they might help. Heat is energy, right?
Those things hurt. Yeah. No, have you ever?
Oh, yes.
So okay, so Nahaz, so that's everything about not everything. That's a basic primer for foam. There's another really popular material. There's thermoplastics, which might be what you're more familiar with, because I think that's more what cosplayers in the Dota space that you know have been using. And that is a flat sheet of plastic. When you heat up, becomes completely moldable. You can sculpt with it. You can put it on top of a dress form and have it take shape. Yeah, and so you can make all kinds of armor and everything from thermoplastic. And
but that's also that's also like hand sculpted, not 3D printed.
Yes. Right. Yeah. So 3D printing is relatively new. Honestly, all the techniques we're talking about are relatively new. There's this cosplayer, Riddle, who we've worked with at DreamHack a lot, and she's been cosplaying, I don't know, since the 90s, early 2000s. And the materials they used then are wildly different from what's available now, because commercially, people weren't targeting cosplayers before. You didn't have Yaya Han fabric lines. You didn't go into Joanne and specifically see cosplay patterns, right? The word cosplay kind of hit the mainstream maybe 3 to 5 years ago. Probably because of Yaya Han. Like, I think that
she's who inspired me, definitely. She, you know, when she was in, was it Heroes of Cosplay? I was still in high school, and I saw that. I'm like, is this the real life? Like, I'm on board.
Now, was Heroes of Cosplay the Project Runway type one, where they like had to create stuff, or was it different? Because there was one like that.
It was almost like, what was the one about body painting, where like they would sit and body paint each other, but it was instead they would be put on the spot and they had to build a cosplay, and then they would do the back history of each cosplayer. But it did seem like a runway where they split off into teams or on their own, and they had to build their costumes, and that's what was on the show. And then they would show it off at the end, and, you know, the judges would vote.
Yeah, these were all sci-fi shows, Nahaz, I believe. That's where they all ran. And they were kind of one of the first attempts at pushing cosplay into the mainstream. And so now we have all these different types of EVA foams, the common one, and then Warbler is the normal thermoplastic that people use. And then 3D printing is really new, because those are expensive and complicated. And now all of a sudden there's like a Groupon for, you know, the big, nice, shiny 3D printer that's not a $5,000 investment like it used to be. So I would still say 3D printing is sort of a specialist thing, though.
That
not
was
where people start.
So I know in some of the conversations that I've had at the Dota lands, like you'll see some of these ridiculously elaborate get-ups with the lighting effects and such, and a lot of people assume that that's mostly 3D printing, but it's still pretty rare because, again, as you say, the cost factor is even now still pretty prohibitive for a lot of people.
Even just the printing bed, right? So if you think about those big build cosplays, like the breastplate that Lily was just holding up, the printing bed you need for something like that is massive. And you're talking about a week-long print. And then it's going to be really heavy and it won't necessarily be flexible. And you still have to sand it all down, and it's expensive and time consuming. Right. So people tend to 3D print accessories or extra pieces. So, the really cool belt buckles, or sometimes they'll do shoulder pieces and stuff. But for things that have to move with your body, I think that foam is really the favorite now. It's so much more comfortable than wearing plastic is.
Yeah, that's actually why I went into EVA foam. This armor way back here is actually Warbler. I used to live in Oregon, and I never was concerned that going outside would really warp my armor, because now I'm in Georgia. However, when I made the switch over to EVA foam, I have absolutely loved it, because you're right. You could move better in it. I could wear it for longer durations, and it wasn't heavy at all. So, there is benefits to both. And I also agree with you on the accessories, because the one thing people don't realize is when it comes to a 3D printer, you want to make molds, because once you have your mold, you can just fill it with whatever material you want, and that goes a long way.
Yeah, there's that's a great point, because so what was it when Horizon came out? The cosplays of Alloy that we saw, Community Cosplay did this wild one where I don't know if I can describe it well enough, but it was all of these black overlapping scales with maroon threaded through them is the best I can remember it. And it was hundreds and hundreds of these scales that they printed, molded, and then just churned out so that they could stitch them all together to make the Alloy scale armor, essentially. Oh,
I'm really glad you brought that up.
Because a lot of I want a laser cutter.
Oh, really?
A laser cutter to cut out all those,
equipment.
Yes.
Huh. Yeah, I just think it's always been interesting to me, because even the cosplays that use 3D printing that I've seen, there is, as you said, there's a lot of craftsmanship fitting it all together. It's not as if you just input into this machine and out comes something that you can wear and looks impressive. There's still a lot of thinking in terms of manufacturing the individual pieces and then fitting them together. And that's something that I feel like doesn't always come across when you see the finished product starting across the stage.
Yeah, you don't see that. And well, so 3D printing, Lily, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but it's controversial, right? Have you ever kind of had that pop up for you in competitions and around? I don't know how much you compete, but
that's the extra mile, right? Yeah. And so you're like, oh, you 3D printed. And then you look down at all your handmade crafts, and you're like, is this worth it? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and some people will say, well, if you 3D printed it, that's just cheating, because you just downloaded someone's model from the internet and you didn't really do anything except hit a button on a machine. But to Nahaz's point,
not everyone 3D prints.
Not everyone can do that, and 3D prints actually aren't very smooth. So you have to spend forever sanding them and painting and all the and oh my goodness. It's a whole complicated world, and what I'll say on that is a lot less things are 3D printed than you think there are.
Yeah, that's certainly been my experience, is that even when that's involved, there's a lot of creativity in terms of making it all work together and fitting the finished product. So tell me a little bit about, for you, Tygarlily, what's the creative process behind all this? Where does it start? Where do you get your inspiration? Is it games that you play, or characters that you know, or is it more stuff that you want to explore? Tell me a little bit more about the motivation that goes into one of these projects.
I feel like after 5 years, I'm in a different position. So I'm going to tell you how I felt in the beginning. In the beginning, it was just, I fell for a fandom that I actually loved. So in this case, it was the Witcher series. The Witcher 3 was on its way. Nice. I finally got into the books. I really associated to a character. And then, eventually I would watch social medias, and at the time I was on Tumblr, so there's a lot of art flow on there and a lot of amazing cosplayers that inspired me. And so I'm like, oh, they're doing it, looks fun, now I want to try it. And so on my own time, without even a thought of showing it off, I put it together. And then I started realizing there was places to wear these sort of things, and like other individuals that also love the same things I did. So it wasn't until I was in a costume that I worked really hard on my own time, do what I wanted. For me, I was listening to audiobooks while I made it. And it was a very introverted thing to do because I could listen to the book I really enjoyed. My hands were busy, and by the time the book was over, I would have this magnificent piece of like armor. At that time, I was leatherworking. I learned how to stitch medieval style bags that really fit Siri, because that was the cosplay I picked. I really associated with her. I loved her. And so that's what it depends on some people. Some people do it because they really want to show off their skills. Other individuals just want to do it because they absolutely love that character. So, when you see a cosplay and you can really see the detail and time someone put into it, even if it's purchased, even if it was handmade, you can just really see how much they loved that character and then that they wanted to become it. So that's the definition of cosplay. It's costume and playing. So that's what happened. And then I went to my first con, and people would walk up to me and be like, I know who you are, I love you. And that's so addicting, like being put on the spot and but I wasn't myself. I was that character. And I'm like, oh, they love me. Cool. And that felt really good. So, that's my inspiration. That's what got me to start.
It's a really cool thing.
You've kind of asked my next question.
Go for it. Yeah.
No, I want to hear, because you mentioned in your answer specifically as you started how the way that you approach projects has kind of changed since you've gotten more seriously into it. And now just the way that you began that answer, it sounds like now you have a different process. It's maybe more of a business or more analytically minded. Tell me a little bit about how that journey has gone for you, and how does a project now feel when you're starting things?
Like I said, I got Alphonse helmet made to help motivate myself into building something new. And you go through all these costumes, you're like, I feel wiped out. I feel like I've made everything I want to. Like, what else can I make? Because before, for me, it was making something I really enjoyed, and then the afterthought was what others thought. Now I'm in a position where I care about what others think, because it'll bring attention in, it'll bring in business, because I'm a commissioner. I have a commission I'm working on right now, but it's mainly because I posted a picture of me working on this guy, and then working on my Monster Hunter armor in the back. And so it's really hard to be like, okay, what game can I base my armor off of that I enjoy and that others enjoy too? So I'm not just considering myself anymore. I'm considering the group, the community, what people want. Like, do they want to watch me build it? Do they just want to see the finished product? So right now I'm just going on what I really want, and also thinking of what others want. So that adds to the business aspect. It's much different than what I used to be and how I used to do it. However, I'm adoring the Monster Hunter community, right? And so like having a community that really like is behind you and like wants to see the end product, that's what's helping motivate and push me forward.
And now, have you been streaming and playing Monster Hunter and everything too, to kind of, get your mind there?
Yes. Well, the fun thing with Monster Hunter is I look exactly like my character. So with the armor on, I'd be like, hey, look, it's me. But, I tend to play the games that I'm cosplaying off of, because one, I really love immersing myself into the character. So if a fan happened to walk up to me while I was wearing it, I could respond to them the way they'd expect the character in the game to respond.
Yeah, so that to me is is one of the coolest aspects of it. A lot of times as gamers, I feel like we really get compartmentalized across the different communities. And I just loved in your answer the way that you talked about interfacing with different communities as you become interested in these different characters, that it's not just about you and what you make, it's about immersing yourself into these different groups and in our world, which is, it's hard to do a lot of the time.
I feel like it's also important too. Sorry. Well, I feel like it's important too, because when someone sees you having fun in cosplay, they'll want to cosplay too. So it's like, that's also coming out of business 100%. Aspect. So like, yeah.
Yeah, there's something really cool that happens because Lily was talking about listening to a book and crafting, and it was a super introverted thing to do. And what you'll realize is that a lot of cosplayers are really, really introverted. And when you put on a cosplay, it gives a conversation topic and it takes away some of the not necessarily social anxiety, but sometimes that is what it is. And it sort of, it takes away this barrier and it gives you like support to lean on. And you make a lot of friends and you do interface with a lot of people. I mean, that's, my story was exactly the same. Was I had a community that I loved, really? And I was like, I must cosplay. I absolutely must do it. I need to be able, I wanted a visual representation for how much I loved Dota, which is why I made Dota cosplays, because I wanted something at TI to signal to everybody around me, hey, I'm one of you. Hey, I love it here. And it made it so much easier.
I want to talk about you for a second because I wonder, I think most of the people that are watching us probably are familiar at least with a little bit of what you do, but it's interesting for me to hear you say that, because to me, your cosplays have always been so much fun because they bring out these aspects of the character that you don't necessarily experience in thinking about the game or that playing the, like your Storm Spirit cosplay to me was always so much fun because it captures this like chaotic, mysterious trickster aspect of the character that you don't think or talk. It's in the lore, like guys like Slacks will know it, but you don't get to think or talk about that particular aspect of the character in normal thinking about the game. And so when you see some of these really fun cosplays, it's not just that they're elaborate or, you know, visually impressive. It's that they bring out an aspect of the character that you don't get to experience as much. And I feel like you do that with the Storm Spirit and the Beastmaster cosplays. You do that so well. That's an aspect of cosplay that I really love that I don't think gets talked about enough.
So honestly, my cosplays aren't elaborate. They aren't intricate. No. Like when Lily held up that breastplate, I was just like, because I was so impressed.
I've seen so many good ones of yours though, but you embody your characters. Like I said,
mine are sewing. That's the difference. Is that I hate armor. I'm terrible with that. I don't have the patience.
Imagine us together.
I know.
That's the thing. You guys need to collab. Oh my goodness.
Easy. I'm down. But so Lily, I don't think you play Dota 2. But so Storm Spirit and Beastmaster are. So I started out cosplaying in Dota. There aren't a lot of female heroes, and they're all kind of like princessy and sparkly and stuff, which is fun. Like I have a tiara and a sign that says princess in my streaming room, and like that's not a problem for me. But I cosplayed all of them, and I was getting kind of bored, and I was like, okay, I need to do something different. And like I said, I don't like to be fussy. So I took male characters and I said, what would they look like if the devs had made them female? And that meant I didn't have to follow any specific artwork. I could do it entirely in my head. And Beastmaster is this like feral character. Like his face is painted red. He's got a wild boar and a hawk with him. He's covered in fur and leather.
I think I've seen a picture of that. It was amazing.
Oh, I love that cosplay because you just get to unleash. I actually did. Well, so this is.
You say that, but it's not. It's funny. What's cool to me about that is if you actually look at the character in game, like the portrait and the voice acting, which Dota has some of the best voice acting to me of any game I've ever played still. But the character in game often comes across as quite stoic. But if you read the lore, if you read where the character came from, like he's actually a really kind of crazy dude. And Nessa's Beastmaster is like super nuts. I mean, if you see the photo shoots of you as Beastmaster, and I think that to me is so cool that you get to see a take on the character that's very, very different from what you experience in the game or even thinking about the game.
Well, and my
maybe
guess,
I don't mean to wax poetic too much, but I've always
Well,
really
like,
loved
having
it.
the having the opportunity to make what you want and not worry about it. That is my favorite thing. That's what I did that with the Ninetales, because it's like there's no real Ninetales armor out there. It's what you want.
That's awesome.
You get to do whatever you want, and that's what. And when Lily was talking about cosplaying Ciri, and it was her first thing, and how much she loved The Witcher, I was sitting here and I was like, I bet that experience was so freeing. And just like you got to just embody what you want to be. And that's, Nahas, you're right. People don't talk about that much. It's cosplay. Yeah. You're in a costume, you're playing, you're having fun.
Yeah.
And people get lost in that because they see big brand accounts.
So that's the thing. I have been, for a long time, I've talked to a lot of people about this, and even businesses getting into esports. I think there's still a ton of untapped value, because when you look at what a lot of the professional sports do, they try to get people to the ballpark or to the playing field that aren't necessarily super into what's going on in the game. There's, free hot dog night, straight A student night at the ballpark. I think cosplay does that for esports. It gives people another way to interface with the game. Like I still think there should be way more sponsorship.
I think we lost him for a little bit, but that's okay. He'll come back.
Well, I mean, just to pick up where he left off, it's true, because we all have our favorite teams, and like, how else can you cheer them on? So like, I cosplay Overwatch, and I'm very big into the community in Atlanta, and I was brand new to Georgia. And so that was, like Reinessa said earlier, that was my way of wearing a protective layer, dressing up as one of their favorite characters, going to a party where I knew absolutely nobody, but they were happy to see me. And that like prevented my social anxiety. But at the events, it really brings the fans together, and they love seeing that. And they love the photos, and like having that at the events really like brings the event to life.
So I have a question to kind of, stretch our brains a little bit here. We're talking about becoming our favorite characters and blending in and fitting in and connecting. So if you could pick a character, pick a series, and just have that cosplay spat out of a 3D printer for you, and go jump into a community event for that. What community are you picking, and what cosplay are you picking? And I'm going to go with like an easy answer to give you guys some time to think about this. My absolute favorite cosplay of all time that I wouldn't change at all and would happily wear all the time if I could is X-23. And I love it to death. Oh. She's like this chaotic, neutral, unhinged, misguided, good-hearted when you can reach her kind of thing. And she's just fun. Like, there's just something about her. And unfortunately, the X-Men are not wrapped into the Marvel universe, so we are devoid of anything X-Men related ever.
So my X-Men character died.
So that would be my dream, is to be X-23 and to have X-Men be relevant again. But I mean, what would you see?
I'm working on the one that I've always wanted, which is a Monster Hunter one. It's been 5 years, and like I really want to tackle it. But my dream outside of Monster Hunter, you're gonna have to come back to me. Let me think a little more.
Would you cosplay Dota, Nahas, or would you pick another game?
I would. I've wanted to figure out a way to do an Invoker cosplay for a long time, but I would. So if I were going to cosplay something as you described, like have it like sort of pop out of thin air, exactly as like awesome, I would want to do something new, because, like I said, to me, one of the cool things about cosplay is a chance to get into a community that you might not otherwise have a ton of exposure to. And so I'd love to do, I've always wanted to do Geralt, because, you've been talking about The Witcher. I've loved The Witcher for a long time. I played the game since the very first one. I thought the very first one was awesome. And I read the books forever ago, several times. And, obviously the gray hair is one thing, but he's always been just a fascinating anti-hero to me. I would do, some point in my life, I kind of want to do an Iron Man cosplay because Iron Man was actually my favorite superhero growing up. And I got mercilessly made fun of for it because like Iron Man was a dork hero back then. And now like Iron Man,
my favorite.
All of a sudden Robert Downey Jr. shows up and Tony Stark is the thing.
No,
and I
Stark.
still think this is hilarious.
So that's a really good one. Yeah. And those fully functioning Iron Man suits with the helmet that does everything and the voice and oh gosh, that's a good pick. That's all right, Lily. What do you have?
Okay, so it's a toss-up because I've always wanted like a demon hunter from Diablo, but like the real deal. But like I should still tackle it, but I've never been able to. In the time of my life that I wanted to tackle it, I wasn't where I'm at now. And if it came to 3D printing, it'd also be Metroid. I've always wanted the full Samus suit. That was actually the first thing I cosplayed with DreamHack was a Samus, but I walk in there with the suit and I was like, this isn't good enough. I wanted her whole suit that day I went to DreamHack. It was my first one. It was like 2018. So, those are on my my wish list of things that if I could have just made for me to wear, yes.
Yeah. Oh gosh, you're talking about Diablo. So yeah. You talk about Diablo and I instantly went, I want to be Andariel. Like instantly, but I don't know where I'm getting the extra arms from.
That's a part of the costume. They probably just sew them on. Yeah,
it's like, so I don't know if you've seen the new Mortal Kombat movie, the old Mortal Kombat movies, and I can't remember the guy's name. Goro? The one with all the extra arms?
The 6-arm dude, yeah.
Yeah, I watched this making of video about like putting him in that suit and the way the arms worked that explained why it was filmed a certain way because like he could only move in very specific ways because of the suit.
Right.
Because in the 90s, it wasn't just cosplayers who didn't have access to these materials. I mean, even movie sets and things like that had significantly more limited things to work with because they just weren't commercially targeted. Adding extra arms is always going to be so great.
I thought of you, Nessa, when I saw there's this both like a time-lapse video and she had a number of comments on it, but there was a thing about how Rosario Dawson played Ahsoka Tano in The Mandalorian, about how long it took to get her into all that makeup and move. And they had to shorten her tails so that she could do some of the stunts, some of the scenes. And I think that's a really cool and underrated aspect of cosplay is you have to make the costume so that the movements are really cool too. It's not just standing there.
And that's why I prefer sewing cosplays because fabric bends a lot better than armor does. And another benefit of cosplaying heroes or characters where you change the gender so you don't have to match the exact design, it means you can make things a lot more comfortable. Like a lot more comfortable, which is wonderful. Yeah. Underrated aspect. Okay, so I think the last thing I want to talk about is cosplay is a lot more popular, and we were kind of talking about how we want to do it for fun, and yeah, it's a business, and like you said, Lily takes commissions, which by the way, listen up people, she takes commissions in case we're wondering, and it's fun, but I do think a lot of people get intimidated by the Kamui cosplays, the Jessica Nigris, the Kim Patsus, the Stella Chus, etc., who have these big impressive armor builds and everything's perfect all the time, and all of this reps down to cosplay has become, or is more and more so, really, really inclusive. There's so many movements in the community about, any size can cosplay anything they want. If you want to change, like me taking a male hero and making it female, no one's going to judge me for that. Like I can do whatever I want with it. And I don't know, like Lily, I'd kind of love to hear your experience, especially at a DreamHack, because I'm sort of behind the curtain rather than in front of it, at watching that happen and how cosplay has been inclusive and like what we can do to make it even more so.
One thing I always love doing is like no matter who's cosplaying, I will compliment them You know, like the point of us wearing cosplays is because we love the feeling of being inside it. And there's a lot of people that are introverted, and any word they hear that day, they'll take it. One time I went and I went with the custom style Samus, where I used my own hair, and I used her black suit. It was based on Super Smash Brothers, Super Smash Melee, and like behind me I could hear, oh, what even is she? Like those small things will stick to that cosplayer. So, you always want to be accepting of whoever's dressed up and however they dressed it. There's a fine line between appropriate and inappropriate, and as long as everyone's respecting that, because you have to consider the kids and the family, we'll always accept it. And there's always that argument too. It's like, oh, they made that, oh, they bought that, and to me it doesn't matter as long as you're having fun, and that's the most important thing. If someone makes you your costume, you want to show it off, you want to wear it, because it's not like you've always wanted to be on that level, but you can never do it yourself, so you're going to ask for help, and there's no issues asking for help.
Yeah, I think that's a great sentiment. I mean, it's something I think about a lot with having a daughter now, is that let's face it, I think young women, much more so than young men, grow up with other people telling them what their body should look like, and I think that's bullshit. And I think that I want my little girl to be able to grow up defining her own experiences and feeling good about the way she looks and the decisions she's made. And so, I think the spirit of inclusivity that you're talking about is something that we could all stand to practice at all times,
yeah, I love that.
Frankly.
Yeah. And there's something about when you've built a cosplay, because I will say this, I think this is universal for 90% of cosplayers. When you get 90 to 95% done, you hate it. Like, so, or somewhere in that like 80 to 90%, you hate it. You think everything's wrong. You wish you'd change something. You're so frustrated. You're burnt out. And then you finish it and you're in love, and it's the greatest thing you've ever created. And every cosplayer has gone through that. So the wonderful thing about being around other cosplayers is they know your pain. And they get so excited over the littlest dumb things that you did. They're like, oh my goodness, a French theme? Wow, this is beautiful. And you're like, how did you see that? Like, yes. It's in the inside of my clothes. How did you see that? But it's still, it's so encouraging. I mean, I love it. Okay, favorite cosplay memories. And then we gotta let Lily go. We'd love to keep her here. I'm sure Naz has a million more questions. But my favorite cosplay memory, was when I was at the International and I was getting out of the elevator at the hotel, and I was dressed up as Crystal Maiden in her Arcana, which is blue and silvery and covered in rhinestones and has this big glittery snow cape, and I look just like Elsa. Blonde hair, everything. And this little girl, this little 4-year-old, just starts shouting, "Princess Mommy, it's a princess!" And then like attaches herself to my leg and is just standing there.
That's
and I'm
awesome.
Like, this is the cutest thing I've ever seen in my life. So that's my favorite cosplay memory. I know, Lily, what's one that sticks with you?
There's one where I like the build for Siri specifically. It was my brother helping me build her sword, the Sparrow, and basically like that process of getting to do that and sharing that build with my brother was my favorite. And another memory is, like you said, is when a fan recognizes you and flips out. And so it's Sylvanas Windrunner for me back before she went wildly crazy. But like, being in a completely crazy looking getup with red eyes and big ears, and someone like looking at you and saying "I love you" or just like standing with you, that was my memory. Yeah.
All right, Nahaz, what is it for you? And I know I met you while I was in cosplay, and obviously that's your favorite, but we'll pick a
that's
one.
One of them. That's one of them, because it was so hilarious to me that so I met Nessa at my very first Dota event. She was in a Crystal Maiden cosplay, and apparently I didn't even realize it, but we sitting in the audience, and we sat in the front row, and apparently I was in this very intense conversation with her for a period of time. And I came back, and a couple of the other men that were working with me kind of looked at me and went, "So, what were you guys talking about?" And I was like, "Oh, she's actually a PhD student. She's doing her thesis on da 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 da." And they looked at me like, Like, we all thought you got a phone number. I'm like, no, we were actually talking about the PhD thesis she was working on. I think another one, let's see, I think it was Vicky Kujikawa is her name, did a cosplay of Death Prophet. At that time, it was one of my favorite. It was one of my favorite Dota heroes, and so I made her do the like movement, the animation when Death Prophet that she does in game when she casts Crypt Swarm, and like the costume, it moved exactly like it does in the game. It was mind blowing. Just the fact that not just standing there, but the way the costume moved matched the animations in the game, and I was just like, oh my god, that's. And of course, I'll also remember the other awkward moment was when I met. So her handle on Twitter is Rehab G Naked Reeves, not actually naked. It's an anagram of her name. But I met her in an Elder Titan cosplay at Frankfurt, and she had makeup. And the makeup was so good and so detailed. And I had been introduced to her, I'd never met her before. And I was like, and after like 30 seconds, I realized, oh my God, I'm sitting here, I'm like staring at this young lady. That it was so hard. Eventually we talked, and we get along very well. But I was so blown away by the cosplay that I sat there and like stared at her for 30 seconds without saying anything. And just when I realized what I had done, felt like a complete idiot. But it's just a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite parts of these events, in all seriousness.
That's what we cosplayers live for, is that moment for you, like. I bet she went home feeling real good.
Yeah, no, making people have those moments is pretty entertaining. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, that's a great one to end this on. Tygarlily, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and your insight. You see how excited Nahas was? It's great. For everybody watching, you can find Tygarlily on Twitter. You can go check out her Twitch. It's all Tygarlily. You're going to find it all her social media there. You can also catch her on DreamHack Plays, which is twitch.tv/DreamHack Plays, competing in different tournaments, streaming with us. We love her here at DreamHack. She's around a whole bunch, and she's the best. All right, Nahas, what did you think of your cosplay crash course?
It was awesome. I get to experience this stuff so intermittently. It was great to have a look behind the curtain, and it's also my favorite part about this. I don't know where, like, I can take no credit for these two guests that we've had on. You and your producer have done a fantastic job, but it's so cool to me that somebody that's obviously been in cosplay for such a long time still has that great experience that you hope people are having. I mean, cosplayers at events, they look like they're having a lot of fun. And I love to see somebody that has been doing it for so long still having a good time doing something like that. That's, to me, what it's all supposed to be about.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time as well. And for everybody watching, like we said at the start of the episode, DreamHack Beyond is going to have all kinds of cosplay. The official announcements will be out in a few weeks, the sign-up links and everything like that. This was your little sneak preview. So go ahead, drop a comment on what your dream cosplay would be. Go ahead, like, follow, subscribe, all those wonderful things to the channel if you want to hear more about DreamHack Beyond. And otherwise, we'll see you next week, and we'll see you in July for DreamHack Beyond. Thanks for watching, everyone.